Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. Navalny ally Maria Pevchik says a Russian opposition leader was about to be freed in a prisoner swap when he died. She was revealing this in a video posted on Navalny's YouTube channel. Ms. Pevchik, who was a chairwoman of his anti-corruption foundation, said negotiations for a prisoner swap had been underway for 2 years, adding that after the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, it was clear that Putin would stop at nothing and that Navalny had to be freed from jail at any cost and urgently. She says Navalny was going to be freed under humanitarian exchange, and American and German officials were involved in the talks. The process finally resulted in a concrete plan for prisoner swap in December, according to her. Vadim Krasikov, a Russian who was found guilty of shooting former Chechen rebel commander Zelensky Kangoshvili in the head at close range in Germany in 2019, was going to be part of the deal. 2 U.S. nationals currently held in Russia were also going to be exchanged. Ms. Pevchik says, although she did not name them. But earlier in February, President Vladimir Putin told U.S. host Tucker Carlson that talks were ongoing with the U.S. about freeing American journalist Evan Gershkovich, who is being held on espionage charges. President Putin hinted that in exchange, Russia would accept a person who, due to patriotic sentiments, eliminated a bandit in one of the European capitals during the events in the Caucasus, almost certainly a reference to Krasikov. According to Ms. Pevchik, Russian President Vladimir Putin changed his mind about the deal at the last minute. She said it could not tolerate Navalny being free, and since there was an agreement in principle for Krasikov's freeing, Mr. Putin decided to just get rid of the bargaining chip and offer someone else when the time comes. To the war in Ukraine now, President Volodymyr Zelensky says at least 31,000 Ukrainian soldiers have died in the war with Russia as the country marks 2 years since it was invaded. He made the rare admission of his country's losses at a news conference in Kyiv on Sunday. Mr. Zelensky disputed Russian statements of much higher numbers when it comes to Ukrainian casualties. The Ukrainian president also said tens of thousands of civilians in occupied parts of the country have been killed. He's hinted that Russia could attempt a new offensive as early as late May or early summer. In his words, they will prepare and we will prepare for their fight. President Zelensky noted that millions will be killed in the war against Russia if U.S. lawmakers do not approve President Joe Biden's request for $60 billion of military aid to Kyiv. 2 years on, the war in Ukraine remains an open wound at the heart of Europe. The words of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who was speaking at the UN headquarters in New York, also reflecting on the prolonged 2-year war, which shows no sign of abating, were foreign ministers of the United Kingdom and Ukraine.
2 years on, and a decade since Russia's attempted illegal annexation of Ukraine's autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol, the war in Ukraine remains an open wound at the heart of Europe.
The only people behaving like Nazis are the Putin regime, invading another country and hoping the world will be weak and let you get away with it. That is the simple truth. Putin believes he can take territories, redraw borders, exercise force to build his empire. We must all stand up to Putin, not just out of sympathy to Ukraine, but because his actions in Ukraine are so dangerous for everyone else. If we give in to the idea that one country can invade another with impunity, then we will be left in a dreadful situation where any country could face a similar fate.
We continue to insist that Russia has no legal right to be present at this table, and the future reform should correct this historic mistake that led to deadly consequences. Ukraine wants peace more than any other nation. However, we are not going to allow Russia to kill us freely on the road to peace. Nor will we ever accept any offer to surrender or to concede our lands and freedoms under the guise of peace. Not only because it will make futile, the ultimate price we are paying now for 2 years in a row, but also because we will all be doomed to pay a much higher price in the future.
And as we told you earlier, it's been 2 years since the war between Ukraine and Russia, since the Russian forces invaded Ukraine in February, on February 24th, 2022 to be exact. Over the weekend, President Volodymyr Zelensky reacted to recent happenings in the country. He was addressing a group of soldiers in Kyiv near the airport as a small ceremony where he also spoke to some world leaders. Present was the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, as well as the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, where he also reiterated that Ukraine will win the war. He also mentioned over the weekend in a separate address that at least 31,000 Ukrainian soldiers have died in the war with Russia. He made the rare admission of the country's losses at a news conference in Kyiv. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says 2 years on, the war in Ukraine remains an open wound in the heart of Europe. He was also reflecting on the prolonged 2-year war, which shows no signs of abating. Also addressing the UN Security Council was the Ukrainian Foreign Minister, as well as the UK Foreign Minister. And then earlier on, of course, was the story about Navalny, Alexei Navalny, the Russian opposition leader, whom his ally says was about to be freed before he was killed. Let's talk to the VOA's Anna Chernikova, who is in Kyiv. Anna, great to see you as always. And I imagine it was a very somber weekend in Kyiv. People remembering it's been 2 years since Russia invaded Ukraine. Life, of course, not remaining the same since then.
Good evening. Yes, indeed, Ukraine had number of commemoration ceremonies and events happening over the weekend. A lot of Ukrainians got out to the street to just remind the world that the war is still ongoing, and a lot of relatives and friends of those who remain in Russian captivity also got out to the streets to remind and to encourage the world and Ukrainian officials to fasten to increase the pace of exchange with of the prisoners of war. But of course, we understand that it's a difficult procedure. So mostly this weekend was really about reminding the world that the war is still ongoing and that Ukrainian soldiers remain in captivity in Russia, and to just encourage the world to continue the support of Ukraine. And this is mainly what also President Zelensky was talking about during his press conference.
Yes, a bit more on that press conference. President Zelensky was addressing journalists on Sunday. He said, now is the hardest moment for our unity. If we all split, both externally with the partners and, God forbid, internally, then it would be the weakest moment. It hasn't happened yet. Hearing him say this, Anna, you get a sense of how difficult it's been keeping the nation together. I mean, for him, his family, the rest of the people in Ukraine, looking ahead to a horizon, not knowing when exactly he would get there. His promised victory against Russia, he said so at the ceremony in Kyiv. I suppose he's drawing strength, from the international partners. Does Ukraine feel as strongly that support at the initial start of the war right now?
I was at that press conference, so I can tell you more insights. And this is true. President Zelensky actually was talking about unity inside the country and unity of the allies. And he mentioned that this is the most important now. And he even said such thing that supporting Ukraine until the end should not be the main rhetoric. The main rhetoric should be supporting Ukraine now, because the end, otherwise the end can come very soon. So basically, he was reminding also everyone that Ukraine cannot get these delays with supply, and it's better that delays are not happening from any of the partners, because Ukraine really needs the support on the battlefield, and financial and economic as well. So he was reminding the allies, those countries who've been basically represented by the journalists, because this press conference was mostly mostly addressed by the international journalists. So President Zelensky was talking to the allies that support is needed as soon as possible, and it's needed for yesterday, not for even for tomorrow, for Ukraine. Also, of course, he was talking about Ukrainian internal struggle and Ukrainian internal changes during these 2 years. He was talking about the fact that Ukraine is also changing its military production, and not only him. He was talking about this, but also the ministers of the government during the press event that took place on Sunday. Was also talking about this a lot. Well, I think that, of course, probably the most important message from President Zelensky is that actually Ukraine is doing everything possible to fight more successful, and he encourages Europe and US to not just continue support, but also look for new ways of support, because basically he said that Ukraine remain this protection defense wall from Russian Federation and Russian aggression.
Yes, and on Sunday, the defense minister said that half of the military aid that's due for Ukraine is being delayed. Also referring to the $60 billion that the U.S. Senate is supposed to release, but they're still arguing over that. How does Ukraine feel hearing stories like this and hearing the government coming out to recount, the realities of the war, the 31,000 soldiers who have died in the war, and all that military aid that's still been delayed? Is there any hope? As the government and the officials release these details?
Well, there is hope. There is big hope within the Ukrainian society, because Ukrainian society, well, the main also understanding was inside the country that, Ukraine has no other option. Ukraine has to fight, and otherwise Ukraine will not exist. So this is not about an option like yes or no. There is only one option, that Ukraine has to continue to fight and do everything possible to stay alive. And this is what how Ukrainian society basically perceive all that and understand the situation. Indeed, President Zelensky actually made, for the first time, he made an announcement regarding the losses of Ukraine in this war officially. So he said on Sunday, that 31,000 Ukrainian soldiers actually were already killed in this war. In terms of, society's reaction, I should say that it was not a big surprise. So people were kind of discussing. So it's been 24 hours now since that announcement, and most people are discussing either the fact that this is not a surprise, or the fact that this number is not high enough and the reality is worse. And some experts also believe that the number might be higher. However, some other experts say that this is close to the reality. So, of course, we cannot independently verify this information, and we only have this official confirmation from President Zelensky, and we'll get it as a fact. So, but still, 31,000 people for Ukraine is a huge number, and Ukrainian society definitely understands that losses are high, and this is why the support from the allies is so important, because for Ukraine is not about documentation or policies, is about lives, and this is why the perception on this aid, and especially the perception on the delay of the aid, especially due to some certain bureaucracy or certain internal struggles in other countries, which is the reason for the delay, is perceived here in Ukraine very, with a high, I should say, with a lot of pain, because Ukrainians are paying with their lives.
Pain to stay alive. Thanks again, Anna. Thank you for your reporting, and do stay safe.
Thank you.